Okay, let's talk about natural killer cells, aka the boogeyman of the immune system. Natural killer cells are a type of cell that is essential to our immune defense. They circulate in our bloodstream, peripheral natural killer cells do, and they can identify foreign cells, like cancer cells, and trigger them to self-destruct or undergo programmed cell death or apoptosis. There are cells that take on a similar appearance under the electron microscope that are found in the uterine cavity, and they've been named uterine natural killer cells. However, they are known to be distinct, very different from the peripheral natural killer cells that can be found in our bloodstream. Uterine natural killer cells are the primary type of immune cell that's found in the uterine cavity. In the luteal phase, up to a third of the endometrial cells are made up of natural killer cells. Despite their very ominous, scary sounding name, there isn't really clear, conclusive evidence that natural killer cells in the uterus can cause infertility or pregnancy loss. The original theory about uterine natural killer cells was that they could recognize the fetus as being foreign and then attack fetal cells or attack the cells of the embryo, preventing implantation or causing pregnancy loss. We now know that there is a lack of evidence to show that natural killer cells ever come in contact with fetal cells. But we do know that natural killer cells do play an important role in the establishment of pregnancy via the effects that they have on the endometrium and preparing it for implantation and on the placenta. It is a well-established fact that natural killer cells circulating in your bloodstream, those levels do not correlate with the uterine natural killer cell activity levels. They are thought to be two distinct cells. There are studies looking at women with recurrent implantation failure, recurrent pregnancy loss, that have claimed to identify elevated levels of uterine natural killer cells. And the way that this is detected is by doing an endometrial biopsy and looking at the percent of the cells on the slide that are natural killer cells. There is really no standard established cutoff that is agreed upon and standardized across all the studies that have been done, above which we can say, okay, this is a high level and this warrants treatment. When I read these studies, I personally can't trust whether a level is truly elevated or not when it comes to natural killer cells, because there isn't a standard approach or a cutoff that we can really refer to. But let's say we believe the results and we say, yes, this is truly an elevated level. What are the proposed targeted treatments? Well, suppressing the immune system in general is the name of the game, and there are a variety of approaches. You can use intravenous immunoglobulins or IVIG, which is very expensive, and it's usually a treatment that's approved to treat immune deficiencies, but in this case it can be used off-label, and the idea is to just dampen the immune response. It's not a targeted, precise treatment that's looking just at natural killer cell activity. We're just trying to dampen the immune response. The same goes for intralipids, which are infusions, and then you can also use steroids, which will just generally speaking suppress your immune response. I spent over 2 years working with a bunch of experts in my field, and we combed through the literature and looked at every single study that has tested IVIG, intralipids, steroids, you name it, on patients with different diagnoses, recurrent pregnancy loss or recurrent implantation failure. And across the board, there was insufficient evidence and insufficient study design to prove its efficacy. My conclusions as an expert who's well-versed at interpreting the literature and who treats patients with infertility day in, day out at an excellent IVF center is that we don't know what we're doing when it comes to natural killer cells and the immune system in general. Yes, we know it plays an important role, but we are doing tests that we don't know what the answer means and what is truly abnormal and what's normal. There isn't enough data on the general population that doesn't have fertility issues to actually look and establish a standard. And when we blindly suppress the immune system, we don't know if we're doing harm, right? Because there is a certain level of immune function that might be important to implantation and having a pregnancy be established and continue to grow. So in my practice, I'm not testing uterine natural killer cell activity, and I'm not blindly dampening the immune response. These are just things that right now are still regarded as experimental. And while there may be experts that focus on this and have their own cutoffs and ways of navigating the issue of natural killer cell activity in the uterus, this is not widely accepted or agreed upon, and it's not rooted in evidence.